Okay, so thank you so much. Thank you for coming and spending some time with us today. Is there anyone here that's not from Long Valley? Where's Long Valley? Very good. Anyone for more than an hour away? Yeah, South Jersey, New York, Philadelphia. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming here and making the effort to get here. We wanted to. These are very meaningful events for us to share with you. I know they mean a lot to you as well, and please feel free to share them with your friends and family on social media. You can, there are a number of ways that you can connect with us. We have an amazing Facebook page. It's Ethos Health. We have a wonderful Instagram site, Dr. Ron Weiss, and you get to really follow along with the happenings on the farm, because we always post amazing pictures of what we're growing, what the farmers are doing, and all kinds of things. And so you can follow us there. Another exciting new development is that we will be instituting the regular appearance of our Ethos Newsletter, and that will start coming out quarterly as of this fall. And our first auteur is Sarah. Sarah, if you can tell us a little bit about this newsletter. It's a wonderful thing. She'll give you a little preview of what's in our fall newsletter, but it really keeps you connected to the farm and gives you a lot of nice information. So if you want to sign up for it, you just go to our website, ethoshealth.org, and get on the mailing list, and we'll send you one each quarter.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for those of you who aren't in the area for coming here today. I always say this at the end of every panel discussion, but I didn't get to say it again, so I just want to reiterate that everyone who comes to these events is a lighthouse. The effort that you put in to come today and to listen to these talks and to take the knowledge back to your own life and your community is really what's going to change the world. I sincerely believe that. And we're really excited about our newsletter coming up. I'm just going to give you a very brief overview of what's going to be included. But if you missed some of the other farm days this season, have no fear, because we will have a little review and description of what went on the farm days this past summer, so you'll get to read about what you missed. We will also have a farm update, so you'll get to hear from our farm manager, Nora, about the happenings on the farm and also what produce you can expect at the farm market. Feel free to purchase some today. It's all very fresh and the crunchiest peppers I've ever had. And then we also have another patient story from a lovely patient who also changed her life. So if you're interested in connecting with more people and reading more stories, that will also be in our newsletter. And then finally, we have a calendar of events that you can look at to see what upcoming events you can attend on the farm. And if you're new to eating a whole food plant-based diet, then we have a recipe from our very own Dr. Weiss, a fall-themed lovely recipe that I personally enjoyed and was the first thing I tried out of the Ethos kitchen when I started working here. So we're really excited about the content in the newsletter and the content that you'll get to read going forward. So if you're interested, please sign up for our newsletter. You will receive one quarterly. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. Of course, this day would never have arrived without the work of all of our volunteers, and I would like to read out their names, because without this army, there'd be no parking, there'd just be chaos here. There'd be nothing to eat. There would be no speakers to hear. So the volunteers are Denise Bowl, Laura and Jenny Sweatman, Anna Zavitsanos, the Masiello family, Evan, Henry, Kathy, and Anthony. Robert Stolpe. who has come to who just magically appeared at our first farm day and announced, I will be taking pictures of all these farm days. And I said, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Sarah Zayed, Wendy Yergosky, Karina Lamalfa, Pankaj Gala, the best sound man in the world. He goes, psh, but have you seen his PBS Masters series? Mark Mandler. Nora Puglisi, who I know is the farm manager, but she goes way beyond being a farm manager. Asha Gala, our lifestyle director. Thank you, volunteers. One last thing before I introduce our keynote speaker. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on this farm, and I just wanted to give you a word about it. This farm came to life, or began, out of my midlife crisis. When I had reached my early 40s, I felt that perhaps my life was not going in the right direction, and I needed to change it in a crazy way. And I was extremely frustrated with our healthcare system and the way I was practicing medicine. I was extremely frustrated with the food system in the United States. When I had 2 little children, which happened in my mid-40s, I was extremely fearful that my focus and concern for life was displaced onto them, no longer me. And I was concerned that within a few decades, the planet would not be livable. So I decided to take all these concerns, and really didn't know what I was doing at the time, but they somehow have come to be interactive on this farm. And this farm is really turning out to be kind of the answer to all of these concerns. And specifically, when I know you're not following me, but when specifically and more concretely, they take the form of what's called the Ethos Farm Project. The Ethos Farm Project has 3 segments to it, and we have now been fortunate enough to become a non-profit, as fiscally sponsored by Plant Pure Communities, which is Nelson Campbell, the son of Colin Campbell's life's work. Plant Pure Communities has sponsored the Ethos Farm Project to do social good. And here's what the Ethos Farm Project consists of. It consists of these farm days. It consists of a 100-acre carbon sequestration initiative, I'll tell you about in a moment. And it consists of the Young Farmers Incubator Program. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes just explaining these to you. One of my frustrations in midlife was that the food that we were eating was becoming degraded by chemicals, lack of sustainability, no access to local fresh food. And that was the beginning of my motivation to get this broken down old farm, to fix this. And it's evolved into our Young Farmers Incubator Program. The average age of farmers in the United States is now about 60 or so. The farmers, the vast majority of them, 99% of them in the United States, are using chemical-based destructive methods to grow our food. And we need young farmers to learn how to grow food in a regenerative and healthy manner if our children and grandchildren are going to have something to eat. And that's why we have the Young Farmers Incubator Program. What we do is we take a young farmer onto this farm, we give them housing, and we give them our land, and we give them teaching. Our wonderful farm manager, Nora Puglisi, teaches them regenerative methods, organic methods of how to farm. And when you go into our farm stand, you'll meet Andrew, who is our first incubator farmer. He graduated with a degree in agriculture from Rutgers. And he's here today learning how to farm. So that's step one. Step two is at the end of this year, in 2019, after decades and decades of chemical assault on this land, the last piece of this 342-acre, 300-year-old farm will be liberated from chemicals. Thank you. It's taken us, it's a big piece of land, and it's been very hard. But as you drive out the exit, and as you walk down that long farm road, if you continue, that goes for 3/4 of a mile. You will see on the left, you will see 100 acres where GMO Monsanto soybean is growing to be shipped off to CAFOs to make hamburgers out of animals that are tortured all of their lives. That will stop. Thank you. In its place, starting in April of next year, utilizing a grant from the USDA, Natural Resource Conservation Service, the conservation arm of the USDA. We will reestablish the native prairie grasses that once grew in this valley, that covered it when the European settlers came here in the beginning of the 1700s. That entire field will be planted in these grasses. You get a little picture of them when you came in today at the beginning of our driveway. Those beautiful bronze or copper tall grasses, that's what they are. Those are the original native prairie grasses. The reason why we're planting those is because those are champions at pulling carbon out of the air and burying it deeper in the soil than any plants that we can plant, up to 16 feet. And the deeper carbon is buried in the soil, the longer it stays there, for centuries and thousands of years. We're very excited to tell you that the Rodale Institute, which originated the term organic and organic certification, and Rutgers University will collaborate with us on this planting to study if this could be a model to reverse climate change in the world. We already know from the work that the Rodale Institute has done that if regenerative methods of agriculture are applied to a field like that, it can sequester enough carbon, if it were done the world over, to reverse carbon levels in the air to pre-industrial revolution era levels. That means pre-1800, regardless of what we're burning for fuel. And we think that planting these grasses, which are natives, before that will even enhance the burial of carbon. And then what we're going to do is after 5 years and 10 years, we're going to turn that land over to our farmers and let them grow beautiful regenerative produce. Lastly, we have our Farm Day events, which are these. And this basically addresses my frustration as I, came apart at the seams with Mary Ellen earlier. At really being able to get to the reason to why medical students become doctors in the first place. It's not to keep people, it's not to become managers of chronic disease and to keep people sick all the time, which is what conventional medicine does. It is really to change the course of humans' lives by changing the way they live. And that's what lifestyle medicine and whole plant foods do. They liberate people from chronic disease. And we feel that these farm days are a perfect outlet to expose people who don't know about to these ideas and to support their journeys so that they can have healthy lives. And so, these three arms are part of the Ethos Farm Project. We would like them to grow with every year, just like a beautiful plant does. So, now that we are fiscally sponsored and have non-profit status through Plant Pure Communities, we ask for your support so these can grow and help to heal the world. We always, after each of these events, we send out a thank you to each of you for coming. And if you feel moved or you feel by this day or you feel that what I've said is worthwhile, please consider giving so that we can have these beautiful events for years to come. Thank you so much. Okay. And now, perhaps the best part of the day. Dr. Scott Stoll. Dr. Stoll is the co-founder of the Plantrician Project. Does anyone know what the Plantrician Project here is? Raise your hands if you know. Okay. So the Plantrician Project is very special. You know, I'm going to let Dr. Stoll tell you about it because he can probably explain it a little bit better than I can. But it's one of the premier plant-based organizations in the world. And Dr. Stoll is the co-founder. He's the co-founder of the International Plant-Based Nutrition Healthcare Conference, which is the conference in the world for doctors and healthcare providers to assemble at every year. Doctors from all over the world come there. It's held every year in California. He is the co-founder of the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, the first medical journal in the world that is dedicated to whole plant foods and the reversal and prevention of chronic disease. The New England Journal of Medicine is not. And he is the co-founder of the Regenerative Health Institute at Rodale, which is a unique collaborative project that integrates health and food. He's a member of the Google Food Lab, serves on the advisory board at Whole Foods for their healthcare clinics, and served as a member of the Whole Foods Scientific and Medical Advisory Board. Dr. Stoll is the chairman of the board for the Plantrician Project and chief medical director of the Ruby Cooking School, where Karina got her degree from. Every year, Dr. Stoll hosts the very popular one-week health immersion, Dr. Stoll's Total Health Immersion in Naples, Florida, and helps attendees recover lost health, overcome addictions, and restore emotional balance. In addition to authoring several books and scientific articles, hosting his own daily TV and radio programs, Dr. Stoll has appeared on numerous documentaries, including Eating You Alive, Wait Till It's Free, and does anyone know about the film that's coming on Monday? Raise your hand. The Game Changers, right? Produced by Arnold Schwarzenegger, Novak Djokovic, who won Wimbledon, right? And James Cameron from the Titanic. This guy's in it. He's the most important guy in the film. Please go see it. It's a special event on Monday evening. Theaters across the nation. As well as being a published author and member of the 1994 Olympic bobsled team. He is highly sought after as an international speaker, and you can see why. Dr. Stoll and his family live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He's a personal friend of mine. Thank you for coming here today, Dr. Stoll. I'm going to hand this over to you, and how long would you like to talk for? 2-3 hours. Okay, get something to drink. The bathroom's over there. When you're done, I'll take the microphone. We'll go through the audience for a couple of questions, and then we'll have something to eat. Right?
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, we won't do intermittent fasting for too long, so don't worry. I know you all are hungry, and we have such delicious food that's waiting. So, Ron, I just want to thank you and your entire staff for inviting me, and I want to honor you because you are a visionary, you're an innovator, you're a leader, you're a risk taker, but most importantly, all of that is driven out of such an amazing, passionate heart and compassionate heart to change the world and see the world become better. So we all want to just thank you and honor you for what you're doing. And I want to honor all of you for coming out on a Saturday afternoon, a beautiful Saturday afternoon, and for being here and being a part of this. It is wonderful to be here today with you. And we're going to have a little bit of a different conversation than food today. We're going to talk about how to have healthy bones, how to get rid of pain, how to create a healthier physical body. And so I also want to leave time at the end for questions. So I'll make sure that we wrap this up maybe in about 45 minutes so that I can answer your questions. Part of my practice for more than 17 years was interventional spine and sports medicine. And I served as a team physician at Lehigh University, and I still serve as a team physician with the bobsled team. And so I would get all of the patients that were not getting better from my orthopedic partners. They would fail surgery. They didn't know what to do with them. They would say, go see Dr. Stoll. He'll do some voodoo for you. And part of the voodoo was plant-based nutrition. And then I had to find other alternatives to get people back on the court, back into life, and to try to heal some of the injuries that didn't necessarily get better with food. So we're going to talk about that today as well. And most of all, I just want to make sure that I have time to answer your questions, to answer anything that you might have regarding challenges that you faced or any injuries or issues that might need some direction. So I want to make sure that we leave time for that today. My family normally comes with me today. I have 6 children, 5 at home. This morning we typically do an outreach once a month into inner city Allentown, and our truck was late. We have this beautiful opportunity that we can get organic produce down in Lancaster that would normally be thrown away because the truck is either a degree too warm or the supermarket over-ordered. So we're able to buy that at almost nothing and then give that away to the inner city. So we gave away 18,000 pounds of organic produce into the inner city this morning. But they would normally be here. And thank you. I'd love for you to meet them because my wife is amazing. She is such an amazing resource, too, for the practical application of how to implement lifestyle changes in your life, especially after raising 6 children on a plant-based diet. So today we're going to talk about pain-free and powerful. And, we have paradigms that we sometimes need to break in our minds, these stories or narratives that have been told to us. And we need to break the narrative to understand that sometimes there is actually more to life than we may think. So I put some pictures of people to break some challenges. So we have the woman in the top left corner, 96 years old. I don't think I could do that right now. This long jumper, one of the best in the world, 91 years old, still long jumping. Bodybuilder, how old do you think she is? 82 years old. Oh, wow. Can you believe that? I'm breaking paradigms. This guy, CrossFit champion, how old do you think he is? Doing CrossFit. 92 years old. 92. So it's amazing, but I want to break paradigms to help you see what's possible. Because we have grown up with the paradigm that we, peak at about 45, and then from there it's like a slow dwindle, and you hold on and hope you don't get something bad, and you hope that you have enough quality of life to enjoy your retirement. And then we have this idea that we get older, we end up in nursing homes, and that's not the way that life needs to end. But it's the power of our choices in our earlier life that sets us up for opportunities like this. Now, some of these people are probably, genetic mutants. They have amazing genes. But it is possible, as we know through epigenetics, to change your genes. And how do we change our genes? What's the most important thing that we've all been gifted that we use every day to transform even our genes, our epigenetics, and our future? What's the one gift that you've been given? Choice. You have choices every day. And in fact, how many bites of food do you think you eat in a day? They actually did a study, and they found the optimal number of bites of food. Isn't that amazing? 100. Optimally, you should eat about 100 bites a day. So just think about the power of making choices that influence 100 bites a day. And 100 bites times 365 times 60, 70 years. Incredible transformative power in those 100 bites. But we're exercising choice every single day. Now, there's lots of factors in life that want to influence our choice, right? Internal factors, we have like emotional eating issues, we have stress, we have habits, we have traditions, we have family, we have environment, but there's also a lot of external factors in our culture that want to vie for our choice, and they want to influence our choice. And why does culture want to influence our choice? Money. That's right. My 96-year-old grandfather, when he passed away, Grandpa Blake used to say to me, Scotty, I want you to remember one thing. It's always about the money, and when they tell you it's not about the money, it's still about the money. And so we have a huge multi-trillion-dollar food industry that is trying to impact your choices to separate you from your hard-earned dollars. And so this culture is constantly, through marketing and advertising, trying to influence choice. And they did some studies with functional MRIs looking at the brains of people that were exposed to large common branding that we see every single day. Soft drink companies, fast food companies. And it was very interesting because a functional MRI looks at the activity in the brain. And so when they were exposing people to the brand and looking at the functional activity in the brain, the frontal centers of the brain that are involved in reasoning, logic, and decision-making shut down. And guess what got ramped up? The hippocampus, which is emotional decision-making. So even though the marketing and advertising people didn't realize what they were doing, they have crafted the message and the marketing and the branding in such a way that we stop thinking rationally and we make emotional decisions. So everywhere we go, we're being influenced by brands that are turning off logic and reasoning and ramping up emotional decision-making. And so I just want to make that known to you so that as you are walking through culture, you can say, oh, no, I got to turn on my frontal lobes again. I need to make some rational decisions because now I understand what the culture and industry is trying to do. They're trying to cause me to make an emotional decision to buy something that's going to give me a short-term emotional hit that's going to eventually lead to inflammation, degeneration, and lost quality of life. But I'm going to make a different choice. And that's the power that we all have every day. We can make a different choice. So, we do this, as they were saying earlier on the panel, we make all these choices. We go to the trouble and the effort to change our lifestyle. We cook different foods. We eat foods because we value life. And we want to have the things that are most important in life, relationships. And I would venture to say, and we don't have time to go into this too much today, but the essence of food is relationships. We have to boil food down. The very essence of food is relationship. It's relationship to where the food came from, as we're seeing on the farm today. When you purchase food over in the farm stand, you have a relationship with the farmers that grow the food. You have a relationship with the land because it produced the food. You have a relationship with the quality of the soil and even the microbiome in the soil. You have a relationship now with the sun and the rain that produced that food. When we take the food home and we eat it, we have food and it brings people together in relationships. So we share meals and we are connected with people because of the food on the table. And then as we eat the food has a relationship with ourselves all the way down to our DNA in just 2 to 4 hours. So we are fully connected, fully integrated, fully interfaced with food on a continual basis. But our culture has shifted us so far in the direction of like this personalized life, this individual life. Frank Sinatra, I did it my way, that we think that food is only about me. And our culture has driven us down into this hole where food has become a self-serving, self-indulgent process. And it's disconnected us from relationships. But that's what the beauty of what Dr. Ron Weiss is doing on his farm. And the idea of regenerative agriculture and the concept of whole food plant-based nutrition is that it's reconnecting us to the purpose and the mission of food, which is about relationship. So let's just change gears for a moment now. And we know we go through life and things sometimes happen, right? Things happen. You know, we can be jogging, trying to take care of ourselves, and you step on a banana peel and you tear your ACL. You're doing your best to go hiking and you step off the rock and turn your ankle and tear the ligaments in your ankle. So there are some consequences of living and being active that are a naturally occurring process. But what happens to those ligaments and those tendons and the muscles get pulled, that are injured and pulled? How do they actually heal? And we're going to talk about that today. And I want to ask you the question, what is pain? You know, we have pain, and we're taught so often that, you know, we should not have any pain in life. And when we have pain, what do? We seek to eliminate pain as quickly as possible. And what has become a common finding in almost everybody's medicine cabinet around the United States and the world today? Advil, Tylenol, and pain medications, right? And we take those things, billions and billions of tablets of Nsaids, Advil, Motrin, Aleve, billions and billions of Tylenol tablets on an ongoing basis because we have pain, and we simply think that I shouldn't have pain, therefore I need to take something so the pain will go away. But pain is a part of your body, and it serves a purpose. And what is the purpose of pain? What do you think? Yes, it's saying, hey, we've got a problem that needs to be addressed. Something happened, and you need to listen to the message, so pay attention. And, you know, if the fire alarm went off in your house and you just pulled the battery out, but there was a fire, the house burns down. If you're driving your car down Highway 78, and the check engine light comes on, and you just put a piece of tape over that part of your dashboard, you're going to have a big problem. But we do it all the time with pain. We do it all the time. My knee hurts, I'm going to take some Advil. It hurts again, I'm going to take some Advil. Now it really hurts, I'm going to go to the doctor, and they're going to inject cortisone and give me some Tramadol, Advil, some Vicodin. And we take these things, and we don't listen to the message, and then the body continues to break down, and we have a major problem. Every medication has consequences. What are the consequences of taking Nsaids, Motrin, Advil, Aleve? Stomach, so you can get an ulcer. That's correct. What else? Liver damage. That's absolutely correct. What else? Something really important that most people don't know. It destroys your microbiome. 100 trillion bacteria that are so critical to the health of your immune system and every other part of your function, including your brain. They produce 90% of the neurotransmitters, serotonin, gabapentin, that are utilized by the brain. A regular consumption of Nsaids destroys your microbiome. And so your body can't necessarily respond to infections, and it cannot heal itself. The immune system is the critical component in healing. So if we're disrupting our microbiome, the body's ability to heal itself is also depleted. And so it sets up this potential downward spiral of pain, inflammation, medications, disrupted immune system, more inflammation, more pain, more problems, more rapid degeneration. So those medications, as good as they can be at mitigating inflammation and pain in a short period of time, they have significant long-term consequences. So there's lots of different causes of pain. It's important to understand the cause because in order to treat the pain, you have to treat the cause. So we can have incomplete injury and healing. And they did a large study in California looking at people that had mild knee injuries. They strained the medial collateral ligament on their knee, and they didn't have a healthy diet, so their body wasn't able to fully recover and heal the knee, or they didn't give the knee an opportunity to heal. So it created a little bit of instability in the medial aspect of their knee. That creates a little bit of inflammation and pain. Take medications to overcome the inflammation, and they continued working out, walking, exercising. And the knee, because it has some laxity and chronic inflammation, degenerates, and that population had a much more rapid decline and earlier total knee replacement than populations that did not have an early knee injury or injury to that MCL. So healing is significant and dependent upon the food that you eat, and we'll talk about that a little later. Degeneration. With aging, there is a little bit of degeneration. I feel that. I'm not the same as I was at 25 when I was bobsledding. My boys and I were jumping, and we were trying to jump high, and I can't jump as high as they can anymore. It just doesn't work. But there are ways to significantly reduce degeneration. Tissue stress and imbalance. When we look at our devices like this all day long, our shoulders are rounded. It puts tremendous stress on our trapezius. That's why we get all these trigger points. It straightens the cervical spine, and you lose the curvature of your spine. It starts loading the discs and can accelerate degeneration. And one of the challenges for the youth today is that they're having accelerated rates of cervical disc degeneration and arthritis formation in the joints of their neck because of the positioning from these devices. We can have chronic inflammation. And what is one of the primary sources of inflammation in our lives? The food that we eat, right? What are the inflammatory foods? Dairy, flour, white, yeah, that's right. Flours or processed grains. Sugar, very inflammatory. Meat is very inflammatory. The oils, very inflammatory. Vegetable oil on the omega-6 to omega-3 balance. Ideally, a plant-based diet typically is 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 on the omega-6 to omega-3, which mitigates most inflammation. Vegetable oils are 69 omega-6s, which are inflammatory, to 1 omega-3. And those vegetable oils are ubiquitous in processed food today, restaurant food. Poor blood supply. It's a process called angiogenesis, where we grow new blood vessels. And it's a very important process in healing. If I were to twist my ankle and tear the deltoid ligament in my ankle, because I'm healthy, my body would start the angiogenesis process. And so it turns on the process, and it starts to grow new blood vessels to the damaged ligament so that I have enough blood supply and nutrition to rebuild the ligaments. At the completion of the rebuilding, there are factors that are turned on that cause the blood vessels to die back, and I have a normal, healthy ligament. When we have an unhealthy lifestyle, especially the Western diet, it disrupts angiogenesis. And so we do not have the ability to grow blood vessels into damaged tissue. And we actually begin growing blood vessels into unhealthy tissues like fat and cancer cells. And the Angiogenesis Foundation did a large study looking at foods that optimize angiogenesis. And at the conclusion of the research, we could have all told them that it's a plant-based diet. It's spices and herbs and greens and berries that all optimize angiogenesis. And so by eating a healthy diet, your body is able to grow blood vessels into damaged tissue to assist in healing and cut off the blood vessels that would grow into unhealthy tissue. We can have pain from nerves, like diabetic peripheral neuropathy. Do you all know what that is? So some people living with diabetes have small changes and damage to the little blood vessels that supply the nerves in their feet and hands. So those little fine, delicate nerves don't receive adequate blood supply, and they begin to undergo damage to the covering of the nerve. This sets off an inflammatory process that creates terrible hypersensitivity and pain. And some people can't even sleep with a sheet over their feet because it's so much pain. But the good news is the studies show that in as little as 16 days, it can be reversed with a plant-based diet. So they can live with this for years, but by shifting to a whole food plant-based diet, and like they talked about earlier, I always tell my patients, if you have a disease, you have to fight with every bite. So it really makes a difference, the quality and the nutrient density of your diet. But those people that make that shift, in as little as 16 days, their pain can go away. And this has been reproduced in studies all over the world, with the most recent one in Iran just this year. And we can have injuries to the bone. So this is a little diagram that I had an artist put together for me. It just shows us that so many changes that we undergo in our lives are the result of accumulated injury. It's the way that we use 100 bites. It's the way that we walk. It's the sometimes imbalances that we may have because of an old injury. And so it's, stress and genetics, toxic exposures, posture issues, diet inactivity, all crank the scales, and we develop injury day by day. And early on, our body was actually designed to be healthy. Our body's natural state is health. And so we have to sometimes earn disease by making decades of unhealthy choices. Sometimes those choices are influenced by the culture that surrounds us, and we don't realize that we're making choices or being influenced to make those unhealthy choices. So we're making choices. We feel good. 25, you're invincible. I work with Olympic athletes, and they think that Snickers bars are protein bars. But they are specimens, and they eat it and they feel no difference. But inside of them, we know that something is changing. There's inflammatory markers that are going up shortly after eating that, but they have so much redundancy, such amazing physiology, they can get away with that. And so we go through our 20s, we go through our 30s, we go through our 40s, and then we experience a crisis, a diagnosis, an injury, a degenerative knee, and we say, what happened? In reality, it was this accumulated injury over time that led us to a tipping point. But the good news is that we can go back down that road by making aggressive choices, and the more the rate of improvement is dependent upon the intensity and the density of our diet and our lifestyle choices. So here's just an example of degenerative osteoarthritis in the knee. We're born with this beautiful hyaline cartilage in our knee, and over time, because of wear and tear, because of excess weight that we might carry, because of inflammatory markers in our diet, and one of those is when we eat meat, it eventually shifts our microbiome to start producing inflammatory mediators like Tmao. How many of you have heard of Tmao? So it's a molecule that's actually produced by bacterial populations in our gut. And as those bacterial populations begin to overgrow because of the exposure to our diet, we start pumping out Tmao into our bloodstream. And one of the places that it actually attacks is the cartilage in our joints. And so in order for us to resolve some of these issues, we have to get to the roots, right? So how do you get rid of weeds? My children sometimes just pull the top off the weeds, and the next week they're like, Dad, I just weeded last week. I'm like, well, obviously you didn't get the roots. But in order to resolve some of these conditions, we have to go to the root of the problem. If the root of the problem is a diet that's causing inflammation and the production of Tmao, then we need to shift our diet and make a change. If the root of the problem is sometimes 15% of the population will have a leg that's short, a leg length discrepancy, then we need to put a lift in the shoe to bring balance back to the body. If the root of the problem is a postural imbalance, then we need to strengthen the postural muscles. So it's all about finding the root causes and treating the root causes. So something that's really important to remember is that everything is connected in life. And again, our Western culture, our Western society has really worked to disconnect us. And in so disconnecting us, it's easier to manipulate systems, but we are all connected. And when we're talking about preventing and reversing pain, the entire body is connected from the big toe to the top of the head. Despite what my orthopedic partners would tell you that, I'm a foot and ankle guy, I'm the wrist guy, I'm the elbow guy. And so they would go in and say, well, I've got elbow pain and wrist pain. Well, I'm sorry, I don't see wrists. You'll have to go to the wrist person. Well, it seems like they're connected, doesn't it? So we've disconnected everything, but everything is connected, and it's all connected by this tissue in our body called fascia. Fascia connects from the joints through the muscles to the tendons and ligaments, and it transfers energy and information. And so if you have an imbalance, a tight foot, the tightness in the foot finds its way up through your knee, up through your hip, to the SI joint, and up through the back, and all the way to the back of the skull. And so it's possible that headaches are caused by a foot problem. When have you heard your doctor tell you that? Never. But it's absolutely true. And by bringing balance back to the body and stretching the tight muscles and strengthening the weak muscles, all of that tension that was finding its way to the back of the skull causing a headache can finally be alleviated and the pain can go away. And we'll talk some more about posture, nutrient-rich foods, strength exercise, regenerative treatments, and stress management. So this is an example of how the body is connected through these fascial planes. And you can see that the way the stress is transferred up through the knee, through the back and the SI joint, all the way up to the base of the skull and wrapping around the ribs. But so often today, if you go to see the doctor with pain, they want to first give you medications, and second, they may want to inject you. And what do they inject? Cortisone. What is cortisone? Steroids. And what does it do? Kills tissue. That's right. Actually, they found that if you get repeated injections in your knee, it accelerates the time to a total knee replacement because it reduces inflammation, but it damages the chondrocytes, the cells that build cartilage, and it's only a temporary fix because they didn't pull the weed. They didn't figure out why you have knee problems in the first place. They didn't ask the question as to the causation of the knee pain. They simply injected it, sent you home with some Nsaids, knowing that you would be back in 6 to 8 weeks, and also knowing that you'll end up with a scope and a total knee replacement down the road. So, same patient, 80 years old. Knee on the left is how old? 80. And knee on the right is 80. So, yeah, it looks like that, doesn't it? But we can see this is the inside of the knee right here. And we can see that the cartilage has broken down and they have bone on bone. It can be very painful. This knee, which is the same age, still has a nice amount of cartilage. So often the paradigm or the narrative that is in medicine is that we develop arthritis because we get old, right? Don't ever say that about yourself, right? Your words have power. You're not old. You're getting wiser. You're getting stronger. You're getting more vibrant, but you're not getting older. We don't want to speak that over ourselves. So, but this knee is the same age and the cartilage is the same age, but this cartilage is still healthy. So we know that it's not the process of aging that caused the degeneration of this knee, so it had to be something else. And what this patient shared with me is that he had injured his ankle as a young man, and he's a farmer, so he never did anything about it, and said that his ankle hurt every single day. And so to compensate for the ankle pain, he started shifting on the inside of his knee to take the weight off of the outside of his ankle, and he continued to work. But little by little, step by step, every single day, 2,000, 3,000 steps a day, the cartilage broke down and he ended up with bone-on-bone problem. So it just highlights the fact that if your body is telling you have pain, ask why, and then seek out the answer, and the solution may be much simpler than you think. So how many of you ever had to replace your tires on your car because of a misalignment? So, the car is not in alignment, and, the tread is the same age here as it is here, but because of the misalignment, the tread wore down more quickly on this tire. Well, we have misalignments all the time today. We have misalignments because we spend most of our lives sitting. You know, most of the working jobs today are sitting jobs. So we get up, we sit and have breakfast, we sit in our car to go to work, we sit in a cubby at the computer, we go home, we sit and we have breakfast, and then most of the population sits and watches TV at night or is on a tablet, and then they go to bed. So most of our lives are sitting, and chairs weren't designed to improve your posture. When we sit on a chair, most of us sit all the way back, and our back flattens, and we tend to roll forward. The way to sit on a chair that positions your posture, if you all scoot forward just a little bit, and that forces you to sit tall. Do you feel that? And you may actually feel your muscles fatigue because you're not used to sitting tall. It's almost like sitting on a stool. It's much better for your posture. So when you're sitting for a long time, you can just move forward. Or you can get a ball and sit on a ball, or you get a standing desk, but the more often that you can move, the better. In fact, new studies have also come out saying sitting is the new smoking, right? You've heard that. Yeah. So it's better when you can move and to stretch. And then the last comment is on, you can see what happens to the cervical spine and the muscles in the neck when we're looking at our devices. And so simply shifting your device up to eye level and looking here restores the natural curvature in the cervical spine, takes the pressure off of the cervical discs, and eliminates the tension in those trapezius muscles. Anybody ever get trigger points and tight traps? Yes. And it's because so much of our lives are like this. So the more that we can shift up and back, the better. And a very simple exercise that you can do at home, either with or without a broom handle, is to just simply hold your hands up and squat down a little bit, and you will feel all of those postural muscles engage in the back. And it's a nice thing to do in the morning, or when even if you decide to watch a movie, you can sit and watch the first part of the movie and exercise. This is a book that I have used for 15 years. And Pete Egoscue is the author of this book, Egoscue, and they have realignment exercises by body part. And I've had such amazing success asking people to simply do the exercises at home, foregoing surgeries, injections. They treated themselves, they realigned their bodies, and they overcame their injuries and didn't need any further medical care. So it's a terrific resource. It's also important to find other exercises, and you can do so many of these at home: Pilates and postural yoga, regular stretching. And you know, I stretch all the time. If I'm on the phone, I'm stretching my calves, I'm stretching here, I'm leaning against a table. I try to find every opportunity that I can to stretch. I also I think of it in my mind as redeeming the time exercises. So if I'm on the phone, I'll sit and do a wall sit. If I'm on an airplane, I'll do isometric exercises. If I'm driving at a stoplight, I'll pull up on the steering wheel or I'll do crunches. And so I'm always looking for ways to just move more and exercise more. And by redeeming those little 30-second or 1-minute bites out of your day, it's incredible how much activity you can add to your life and how much strength you can gain over that short period of time. And then if you, there are physical therapists that are trained in the kinetic chain. That simply means the transfer of energy from the foot to the top of the head. And so finding a physical therapist that can help work through your kinetic chain can also be a wonderful way to solve some of the challenges that you might be facing. So who can tell me what a polyphenol is? Compound, right. And what do we often associate? So it's plants, right, it's the colors in the plants, the purple in the grapes, it's the black in the blackberries, the red in the raspberries, the greens in the kale. But polyphenols, just phytochemicals, do amazing things in the body. And when we look at so many of these things in medicine, we want to, medicine always wants to reduce things down to like single functions. So we think about polyphenols only doing one thing. But the phytochemicals, like those beautiful apples over there, when you bite into the apple and it has quercetin in the skin, the polyphenols do amazing things. The colors, they turn off this critical inflammatory switch in the body called NF-kappa beta. And that is a critical switch because it impacts 400 different genes in inflammation. So once that switch gets turned on, it turns on 400 genes in the inflammatory cascade that have been associated with all of these diseases. So when you're eating salad at lunch, the polyphenols are going down into your body and they're turning off NF-kappa beta. It's amazing. It's happening in 2 to 3 hours. This is a great thing to share at a dinner party. Gets the conversation going. Did you know you're turning off your NF-kappa beta switch? And then the polyphenols find their way down into your microbiome. And so it's not just fiber that feeds the microbiome, but it's also polyphenols that shift the bacteria, and they assist in the production of butyrate, which is a short-chain fatty acid. Butyrate also turns off NF-kappa beta. So NF-kappa beta is getting turned off, and there's other sources too, from multiple ways through a plant-based diet. And it's just turning down the whole inflammatory dial. That rheostat is getting readjusted with every meal and every bite. And the quality of your diet really does matter. This was a study that looked at a high-quality plant-based diet versus a low-quality, and it's to highlight the importance of polyphenols and phytochemicals in reducing inflammation. So the low-quality diet, fruits, apples, pears, bananas, melons, vegetables were like eggplant, leek potatoes, zucchini, French beans. Excuse me. But all of those were okay to eat. But when they compared it to a diet that contained more dark colors, red berries, grapefruit, plums, spinach, beet, Swiss chard, peppers, Brussels sprouts, they found that the high antioxidant diet much more effectively reduced inflammation measured by CRP than a low antioxidant diet. So if we're talking about reducing inflammation, overcoming pain, assisting the body in healing, it's really important to shift and eat much more of the darker colored fruits and vegetables. They really do make a difference. And so if you're facing a challenge, an inflammatory challenge, you're trying to overcome a disease, the darker the fruits and vegetables, the better. And I just learned yesterday, I didn't know this, but they have purple basil. Did you know that? Some of you may know that. Yeah, it's delicious. And so purple basil can be mixed with green basil or lemon basil, and you can have this amazing mix that incorporates different phytochemicals and has a more profound effect on the inflammatory levels. When we eat a plant-based diet too, we also are affecting the mitochondria. Does anybody know what mitochondria are in the body? What's the simple way? Like the batteries of the power plants, that's right. But like every power plant, they produce some byproducts, free radicals, reactive oxygen species, and the free radicals are mitigated by the antioxidants in your diet. So when you're eating plants, eating berries, you're having a nice berry salad, all of the antioxidants in the berries help to clean up the waste products of your mitochondria. But they're the powerhouse of the cell, and on a plant-based diet, they help to maintain this very important antioxidant system called glutathione. And a plant-based diet optimizes not only the efficiency of the mitochondria, but you actually begin producing more mitochondria. Isn't that incredible? This is why so many of the high-end ultra-endurance athletes are shifting toward a plant-based diet, because they find they're so much more efficient. It's not just that they're lowering the inflammatory levels, but they're actually growing new mitochondria, which gives them greater energy efficiency. So as we're eating food, it's important to remember food is never neutral. And our culture has taught us that, food is calories. If we eat these calories, we can burn these calories off. We just have to exercise a little bit more. But what's the problem with that concept? It's so simplistic. People underestimate what? The number of calories they burn, and they overestimate the number of calories they consume, right? Grossly overestimate the amount of calories that they're burning. They grossly underestimate the calories they burn, so they never win the calorie war. How many calories will you eat in your lifetime? 58 million, give or take a couple million. So are you going to win the balance of the calories over a lifetime? You have to be a pretty good mathematician, much better than I am, to balance 58 million calories. But food is never neutral, and Hippocrates said that healing is not only a matter of time, but also opportunity. So in the healing cascade, we have to give our body the opportunity to heal, and it's by choosing the right foods that we can be on the positive side of the healing cascade. So a few foods that are beneficial in healing are the root herbs like ginger and garlic and turmeric. And so creating opportunities to expose yourself to turmeric can be really beneficial. There have been more than 1,000 studies on turmeric that document anti-cancer properties. Thousands of studies show effectiveness in more than 70 different diseases. And in some cases, it's actually more effective than pharmaceutical drugs. But what should you include with your turmeric to improve its black pepper, right? The pepperine increases the efficiency by almost 900%. So just a couple twists of your black pepper with your turmeric, and it enhances the anti-inflammatory effects of the turmeric in your diet. These are just a couple of highlights of how plants heal. Things like chia seed, flaxseed, and hemp seeds have omega-3 fatty acids, and the omega-3 fatty acids not only reduce inflammation, but they assist in bone formation and they minimize bone breakdown. When you're eating that steamed broccoli at lunch, the ITCs stimulate your stem cells to heal your cartilage and your bone. Isn't that amazing? Grapes and green tea stimulate stem cells to maintain cartilage and bone. When you have a cup of green tea in the morning, the catechins enhance bone formation, and they enhance your stem cells to grow. Phytochemicals and polyphenols preserve your bone health, as we'll see in a minute. Phytochemicals prevent menopausal bone loss as we get wiser. And cartilage repair is improved by all of the small micronutrients that we have in food. So as you're eating a meal, it's having this profound multiplied effect throughout your entire body. So as we talk about bone and building stronger bones, it's important to remember that your bones are a living tissue. So your bone is alive, your bone is constantly adapting, just like your muscles. So if you were to lift weights and progressively lift heavier and heavier weights, your muscles grow because they're alive. And the same thing is true of your bones. The more that you stress your bones, the more that they activate and rebuild to handle that stress. So bone is a living tissue. If someone is in the hospital and in 36 weeks of bed rest, they'll lose almost 40% of their total bone density. So inactivity causes a depletion of calcium and bone strength. And when we think about the lifestyle of most Americans and now the westernized world, we have a lifestyle of inactivity, and we're not stressing our skeletal systems. We're actually looking for ways to minimize the stress. We put wheels on our suitcases, which I'm very grateful for. But in the old days, you're stressing your skeletal system. And we'll talk briefly about calcium metabolism, because so much of the information today is take more calcium. But it's not really true, as we'll talk about. It's not how much you take in, but what does your body do with it and how much you're losing. That's really important. So osteoporosis is really atrophy of the bones. That's the way to think about it. Your bones are atrophying. And so you have normal, strong bone, and then we get this atrophied bone over time through disuse. And what's interesting, if you get a study looking at bone density, they do wrist, spine, hip, and sometimes a different location. And so some people will have, osteoporosis or osteopenia of the hip, but their spine is fine. So it starts to tell you, well, wait a minute, it's not really a systemic problem then. It's more of a localized issue and a disrupted physiologic mechanism. So calcium can come in many sources, and plants are obviously the best source. And why is it better to get your calcium from food? What do you think? It's better absorbed.
Does it mess with your other organs like kidney or something?
Yeah, because calcium comes packaged with fiber, phytochemicals, micronutrients, vitamins, all of those things that are important in allowing that calcium to be assimilated and absorbed in the right way. Supplementation can sometimes have detrimental effects, as some of the studies are showing now that if you over-supplement with calcium, it can increase your risk of cardiovascular disease and other problems. So if we think about calcium for a minute, we take calcium in our mouth, it goes down to our stomach, and the first step then is absorption in our stomach. And so we need several things to have the calcium absorbed. Vitamin D is obviously important. And so during the winter, it's important to have Dr. Weiss check your vitamin D levels. And if you're low, you need to take some vitamin D especially. How do we naturally get vitamin D? From the sun, that's right. So the more that you can be outside, the better, even in the wintertime. Some other things decrease the absorption of calcium in our stomach that are common today, prescribed by my colleagues. And what would some of those be? I have burning in my stomach, and they would give me antacids, or the purple pill, right? Proton pump inhibitors. All of those decrease the absorption of calcium. Nsaids decrease the absorption of calcium. So medications that are common, there are other beta blockers, all these medications can decrease the calcium. So you can take calcium in by supplement or food and not get it absorbed into your system. Then it goes out into our bloodstream, finds its way to the bone, and it has to get assimilated into the bone. And at that point, we need minerals. These small micronutrients that are found in this amazing regenerative soil that Dr. Weiss is using that find their way into the plants, molybdenum, manganese, silica, all of these micronutrients in the plants assist in assimilating calcium as it makes its way into the bone. And then we have this really important one with excretion. And they've done studies and found that when we have an acidic diet, our body balances the acids that we're eating with a buffer, and the buffer is calcium from our bones. So as we're eating too much meat or acidic foods, the body says, oh, our blood is more acidic, so we need to buffer that with a base. So let's pull calcium out of the bones, tag it to the acid, and we'll excrete it. And so people eating high meat diets have higher levels of calcium excretion in their urine. And when they studied the ancient Eskimos, they had very early and high levels of osteoporosis and vertebral body fractures because of the high consumption of animal products and the acidic nature of their diet. So you can get calcium from lots of different sources. 2 cups of collard greens, 600 milligrams. Turnip greens, 500 milligrams. Couple cups of kale, 350. Broccoli, 190. Soybeans, half a cup, 250. Okra, 123. Fruits and vegetables, sesame seeds, nuts and seeds filled with calcium. And on a plant-based diet, you'll get more than enough calcium to meet the body's needs if you're eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables. And the calcium that comes from plants is much more readily absorbed and assimilated than the calcium that would come from milk. So here's what happens when we're eating these beautiful phytochemicals. It goes down and it turns on the bone-building cells, and it turns off the cells that chew up bone. And so in that way, the phytochemicals are enhancing the restoration and the strength of bones. So here is normal bone, and this is the bone that has resulted from excess animal products. Soft drinks, the phosphoric acid in soft drinks strips calcium right out of the bones. Vitamin D deficiency, supplements that have excess vitamin A. So if you're taking a supplement, make sure that it does not have excessive vitamin A levels, because that also strips calcium out of the bones. Caffeine and tobacco, high sodium content, sugar, and inactivity all take a toll on the bones. And so we can begin to see why we have this epidemic of osteoporosis today, because this is the Western lifestyle. So one of the things that's very beneficial is weight-bearing exercise, and it can be very simple. It can be just not even doing push-ups, but holding positions to strengthen your bones. It can be walking or even adding a little bit of weight to your back with a backpack or a weighted vest. My grandfather used to travel with dumbbells, and he would, watch TV, and he was always using dumbbells. And so there are lots of ways to just add stress to your skeletal system. The astronauts, and we use this in my practice, utilize those power plates, the vibrational plates, where you stand on it and the plate vibrates at a high frequency, 30 to 50 hertz, and it's rising and falling just a small number of millimeters, but it's stressing your skeletal system, and it's an excellent way to rebuild bone. So just some suggestions then for improving the strength of your bones: weight-bearing exercise, like we talked about, nutrient-rich diet, avoid supplements, check your vitamin D levels, and limit the junk. And stress is also an important component here too. Stress creates an acidic environment in the body, and you'll lose calcium from your bones. Cortisol, which is normally produced under stressful environments in your body, has the same effect as taking prednisone. So if you're living a stressful life and your body is cranking out cortisol in response to stress, it's like taking a daily dose of prednisone, and it will result in osteopenia and eventually osteoporosis. So what if you do all these things and you're still in pain? What do you do? And I'm going to give you just a few suggestions from my experience. So there's an amazing field called regenerative medicine, where we can utilize natural treatments directed at the area of the injury to stimulate the body's normal healing mechanisms to begin restoring and repairing that tissue. So this is an example. This is a patient that had an injury to his patellar tendon, a basketball athlete. So we're looking at the patellar tendon from the side, like right down here. And we can see that there's these kind of dark areas in the tendon. And so you can target some injections into that tendon, and we can see that by 7 months, the tendon has become thick and robust with nice linear pattern of collagen that's been laid down inside of that tendon. And so all of his pain was resolved. He had a nice, healthy tendon, and he went back to playing basketball without any discomfort. But it highlights the fact that the source of his pain was a tear and a degenerative section in his tendon that would not have healed did we not intervene with a treatment. So there are several treatments. One of them is called Platelet-Rich Plasma, and that is where we draw off some of your own blood. We're able to centrifuge down and isolate the growth factors, and then under ultrasound treatment, or just through a needle, you can inject the torn tissue, and it starts the whole healing process over. And it initiates this cascade, which begins to lay down new tissue inside of that torn area. If it's a small tear, that's very effective. If it's a larger tear, they have a treatment now where they've isolated these exosomes, which are signaling molecules from one cell to another cell. And so these molecules signal the stem cells and the other reparative cells to pay attention to the damaged tissue and to heal that tissue. And as an example, I recently took care of a baseball player from Florida who had almost a complete tear of his rotator cuff. But the surgeons didn't want to operate because he was 19. And the outcomes after surgery returning to baseball are not great when you've had almost a near full thickness rotator cuff tear. So we were able to do exosomes and PRP in his shoulder and then repeat the MRI in 4 months, and the rotator cuff was completely healed. And he's playing baseball this fall. So there are some beautiful options to heal tissue and to mitigate that damage, because over time, if that rotator cuff is not healed, he starts to develop pain, and eventually it will tear through, and then you have to undergo surgery. And surgery is as good at fixing things, but it doesn't repair things permanently, and there's always a risk of a secondary complication from surgery. So anything you can do to treat the tissue and heal it makes a big difference. And this is an example of this is the needle under ultrasound, and we're injecting right into the tendon. So you can direct it where it needs to go. This is a slide I put together because I just wanted to highlight this concept when we're talking about regeneration. So this is the regenerative potential of a whole food plant-based diet. This is not based on randomized control trials or meta-analysis. This is based on 16 years of experience in treating people and reading lots of studies. And I really have come to believe in the power of organic food, especially grown regeneratively. There are at least 25%, at the very low end on the studies, more nutrients in organic food than non-organic food. And in many cases, when they measure the polyphenols, the antioxidants, phytochemicals, it is far superior, 40 to 60% more in organic compared to non-organic or conventionally grown food. When they've done studies looking at organic food at Hershey Medical Center, they're looking at purple potatoes, and the purple potatoes are able to create phytochemicals that kill cancer cells when they're grown in organic soil, but they're not present when they're grown in conventional soil. So it gives us an idea that as we're eating organic produce, we may be getting more than we really thought we were getting. And so the value of organic is far superior, I believe, over time than we really realize. So, and I have seen that when people even make a shift to eating more organic food, their health and their quality of health and the rapidity of their improvement increases significantly. So I really believe that the regenerative potential increases with the percentage of our diet that is from organic, whole food, plant-based diet. And this is not just physical regenerative for you and I, but this is also regeneration of the earth. This is regeneration of water resources, land resources, soil resources, climate change. The more that we shift in this direction toward more and more organic, whole food, plant-based diet, the greater the regenerative potential at every level of that interconnected food web that we talked about at the beginning. And I want to end with this too. No matter how far you've traveled down one road, you're only one step away from choosing a new direction. And that applies to every single day. If you go down a road, and if Ron Weiss had cheese pizza, it's okay, because the next meal he just chooses a different direction. I really want to encourage you that, give yourself grace in the process. When we take on guilt and shame and condemnation, or we're hard on ourselves and we judge ourselves as we're making a lifestyle change, it makes it more difficult. If you can give yourself grace in the process becomes fun, and the process leads to breakthrough and to outcome. So this is just some resources for you. This is the Plantrician Project, the not-for-profit that we started to educate healthcare providers. And as Ron was so kind to point out, we have conferences, we have resources, we have free downloadable quick start guides. We started the journal, the International Journal of Disease Reversal and Prevention, and I put a comma instead of period. But that journal is free. We created it to be an open source journal so everybody can access the journal, so there's no barrier to accessing life-changing science. Dr. Kim Williams is our editor-in-chief, and he's doing an amazing job. We just started in April, so our second edition is coming out next week. And you can sign up on the website, ijdrp.org. Those are our conferences. This is a way to find a healthcare practitioner, although you don't need to do that because you've got Dr. Weiss here. And of course, Dr. Michael Greger's website is always a tremendous resource. And I just want to thank Dr. Weiss and all of you and the Ethos team for allowing me to be here today. Thank you. Thank you, Asha. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. We have time for a few questions?
Yes.
All right. Then we'll go eat.
Anyone have questions?
We have a question right in the front row.
This young lady.
Have you seen with the plant-based diet with reflex sympathetic dystrophy or chronic regional pain syndrome that it makes a huge difference? Also, are there plants like nightshades and things that supposedly add inflammation that you shouldn't eat?
Yeah, two great questions. So we'll start with the nightshade question. Can somebody give me, class, the nightshade vegetables? Eggplant, tomatoes, potatoes, peppers. All right. Yep, that's good. That's the nightshade family. And the studies show that about 1 in 19 people are sensitive to the nightshades. And so they will cause inflammation in about 1 in 19. Oftentimes, though, it's perpetrated that they always cause inflammation, but they don't. It's just a few people. So,
Is it true that Chinese eggplant is not considered nightshade versus the regular eggplant?
that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that for sure. I've heard that, but I don't know if that's true. And the second question, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, RSD, or CPRS, right? The westernized diet drives sympathetic activity. And the more that you shift to a plant-based diet, the more you get sympathetic activity and a decrease in sympathetic overdrive. The other things that really help are intermittent fasting or longer fasts can really help to reset sympathetic the overdrive or overtone in the body. So, what I would suggest, the way that I typically work with my patients is I get them on a really good, clean, whole food, plant-based diet for a good month or two. And then we'll start with like 2 to 3 days of water fasting, and I'll work up to like 2 weeks of water fasting under like supervision from Dr. Weiss. But the water fasting and a good whole food, plant-based diet makes a difference, and it makes a difference over time. The other thing that's really important is to rebuild your microbiome. And I'll share a secret with you. Again, this is not randomized control trial. We're not being videotaped, so I can share it with you. I believe the greatest probiotic is dirt. So, and I say this because living soil is filled with microorganisms. Our microbiome, when we study a healthy microbiome, is the same microbiome in the soil. And so in times past, for thousands of years, people lived in relationship to the soil. They pulled out a carrot, it had dirt, they wiped it on their pants, and they ate it, and they got dirt, and they constantly replenished their microbiome. We have sterilized our food. We're never in contact with soil. We've sterilized our soils, and so our microbiomes are suffering for so many different reasons. So one of the things that I do at home, and this is not a recommendation for me, I'm telling you what I do. I grow plants at home. We have these beautiful grow racks inside, organic soil, and I make sure I eat some dirt every day with my sunflower sprouts, my basil, whatever lettuce, kale we're growing. I get a little bit of the root and I eat it. And I'm telling you what, it makes a big difference. I don't think you ever need to buy probiotics if you're getting some dirt in your diet. Ron?
You know, a lot of us, just to back up what Dr. Stoll is saying, a lot of us take probiotics, right? And what is the number one organism in probiotic preparations? Lactobacillus is a soil organism. That's where it comes from.
Right.
And the other thing is that there are plenty of studies that have been done on the surveying the bacteria that is found on produce. And we know that the bacteria or microbiome on conventionally grown produce is much different than the microbiome on organically grown produce. So it begins to tell you that what Dr. Stoll is saying is all about that connection to the food that is being grown that goes into you and then revolutionizes what's happening. And it starts with the invisible world, the microbiome.
And a little dirt won't hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll get to you next.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make a comment on the dirt thing. I can't see myself eating dirt, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm just
But,
telling you that it's,
maybe if you grew it yourself, you know.
if it's your own, and what
you
they
know it's
actually find
organic
with,
soil. But there was something that happened in Mendham, and I don't know if you're aware of it, but they said that it was from a food handler, that he had hepatitis A, and he ended up infecting like 17 people. One of the people actually died. So, you know, I guess you just have to be like really careful of where you're getting your produce.
and that's this whole connectivity and locally grown food and the importance of like even beginning to grow some of your own food. I really believe that we're going to see in the near-term future food security with cams that are watching food, and you'll be able to go back and see every step of the process where your food came from. That's forthcoming.
This, just so I know because you're from just over the other side of the river, just the comment, everyone, this young lady talked about the Mendham situation with the hepatitis A, right? So hepatitis A is a virus that is humanly transmitted. And there's been an outbreak of about 300 some odd cases in the state. There's one person who actually died. There must have been something else going on besides the hepatitis A. But many people who came in contact with this server in a restaurant, it didn't have anything to do with soil. It was once a person is infected with hepatitis A, if the person serves you a glass of water or gives you something to eat, you will get the hepatitis A. It's personally transmitted, but not soil related. This young lady.
Right, Dr. Weiss, I think she was next on the side
I'm
over
sorry.
here.
I'm not a good picker. Okay, you're on deck.
You're on deck.
Oh, you look familiar to me.
Oh, hi. I wonder if you can talk about Game Changers and your role in it. And I'm curious about what caused the year-long delay. I heard that it was to improve the film. And what is it going to be like over the upcoming weeks?
So just briefly, The Game Changers was produced, as Dr. Weiss said, by James Cameron. And it's a film that looks at athletes and performance and plant-based diets. And so they interviewed some top athletes, from Olympians to Serena Williams, Scott Jurek, the ultra marathoner, during his his trek up the trail, the Appalachian Trail. And so it's a powerful movie because it shows the potential and the possibility of a plant-based diet in very strong, very tough athletes. So it's another thing that changes paradigms or thoughts of what we think food will actually do to people. And it shows that when you eat the right food, it optimizes performance, strength, and muscle building. So it's an amazing movie, and I think it's going to really shift the consciousness, especially of like the millennial and sports population that have thought for so long that meat is the only way to build muscle and gain strength. They really do a good job of deconstructing some of these ideas that are held as myths in the sports world. There are a few physicians in there, myself, Dean Ornish, Kim Williams, Columbus Batiste, that talk about the physiologic changes that happen. So I was very blessed to be a part of it. It was delayed because of negotiations with distribution partners. But in the process of delaying, they kept refining the movie. So it's been in process 7 years. Wow. So it was a long, arduous process. And so when it comes out, you'll see it's high quality. It is a beautifully done movie. And I think it's going to powerfully impact the world.
Is Arnold Schwarzenegger in that?
He is in that, yes.
I just read something yesterday that said he's 99% vegan.
Wow. That's big. Yeah, he has some really funny comments in there.
You don't mind fielding a question from a nurse, do you?
I am happy to field a question from a nurse. They're the most important health caregivers in the hospital.
Actually, it's not a question. I just wanted to get back to the dirt issue. When I first saw Dr. Weiss, I was a mess. And after many tries and stuff, he finally said to me, "How do you feel about not washing your vegetables?" And I said to him, if I know where they come from, I don't have a problem with Washington. Now, if you come to my house for dinner, maybe I'll wash them. But it took a long time. But it's wonderful. I haven't had issues in more than 6 months.
Wonderful.
So it really works if you
It does. And your comment is right, knowing where it comes from. And that's why I eat my own dirt, but I would need...
I'm very new to a whole food plant-based diet, and I have to say thank you so much for today. It's actually my husband that has brought me along here, and I'm delighted. I'm very struck by your comments on posture. I work as a yoga sports scientist with athletes, and so for me, being new to a whole food plant-based diet has been personally about changing the margin. And so working with athletes on posture is all about helping them change the margin within their performance.
Right.
And I wondered what your thoughts were as it relates to postural changes in the digestive system when we're slumping, what effect that might have in changing that and sort of facilitating a greater process, particularly from a nutritional perspective.
I think you're hitting on a really important point, that there's evolving research right now that our posture not only impacts digestion, but it impacts mood and it impacts attitude. And you can almost watch somebody sit or walk, and you can, get an idea of where they are with their mood and their attitude and their outlook on life. But certainly, as you're saying, as we slump forward, it impinges on the GI system and it can hinder adequate processing of the food and digestive process. And that's, standing up, opening up, opens up the lungs, oxygenation, opens up the GI system to function properly, alleviates all the stress, turns our eyes upward. We're more likely to look out and see people's faces and see the sunshine. Everything opens up as we open up, just like a flower. But I think you bring up a very good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
As I've gotten wiser, I notice that if I'm walking especially if I'm walking too fast, I trip on the soles of my feet seem to stick to the ground. Is that related to posture or?
Some of the things that happen with aging over time, because we sit so long, we get tight hip flexors. And so we end up rotating forward like this because our hips are tight, and it makes it harder to lift your feet with your hips that are tight. So one thing that might be helpful without evaluating you, start working to stretch your hip flexors, which opens you up. The other thing that especially yoga practitioners will teach you is really important to exercise your feet and your ankles, and we don't do that enough. And so walking barefoot, or even when you're sitting, squeezing your toes, opening your toes up, stretching your ankles will help that process as well. And the last thing is to stretch your Achilles tendons, because we often don't stretch the Achilles. Those would be a couple of quick suggestions for you to work on that gait.
Hi, I have actually a few questions, but they're simple ones. I'm not
Great.
sure you can address all of them. One is some people, some formulators of curcumin are switching away from black pepper. They say, you know, because it may cause gastrointestinal
For
problems.
some people, that's true, right?
So, but generally, it's okay to have it.
And I always tell people when I'm treating people individually, know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so if black pepper causes indigestion, then just don't eat black pepper. And you know, it's only just a small amount of pepperine that you would need in there to activate the curcumin. But most of the time when you're cooking with turmeric, you're going to have all of those things in there, including the pepperine from, you know, some source of pepper that's going to activate the curcumin.
I see. Okay. So my next one is about Tmao. And I've heard that taking in choline would cause more TMAOs to be formed. And how
Choline.
much? Yeah, choline.
From eggs.
Only from eggs?
That's one of the primary sources from choline. The studies have all been done on choline from eggs.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen any studies on choline, other sources of choline that would cause TMAO, but it's been predominantly eggs, the studies I've seen. I don't know if you've seen anything different, Ron, but
It's the greatest source of
it is.
So they usually use eggs.
It's not nature's perfect food, but it's nature's perfect, you know, egg for a formation of a chick, but it's not nature's perfect food.
I see. So your advice, how much choline can one take, like orally, each day?
I don't think you need to take choline.
Certain supplements have it.
Right. And in the supplements, you know, if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet, I really don't think that you need to be worried about getting some of these micronutrients, especially if it's coming from like Dr. Weiss's farm, where you're getting this rich, nutrient-dense food. If there's a little bit of choline in a good whole food supplement that you're happening to take, that's probably okay. It's probably more important to be worried about getting iodine in your diet than choline.
I see. Thank you. If you don't mind, I have another one about calcium. Some people have reported that they actually, because they tested low on calcium, and they feel kind of lack of strength and feel fatigue.
Sure.
And after supplementing with calcium, they feel better. So I guess that's just blood calcium. So how do you
Well, calcium is
judge?
important also in muscle contractility. You have in the muscle, won't go into the physiology, but calcium is important for contraction of muscle. So if you do have low systemic calcium levels, you will have some muscle contractility challenges. But again, if you're eating a whole food plant-based diet with lots of greens, you'll get sufficient calcium.
Okay.
Just last question.
Yes.
How did you start your own journey? Like, how did you switch to plant-based? What happened? Was it?
I'll give you the 2-minute version or the 1-minute version so we can go eat. But I was treating patients many years ago, and my patients kept telling me they were falling apart. And I asked a woman there one day what falling apart meant to her, and she told me that her marriage was falling apart, their finances were falling apart, she couldn't travel to see her grandchildren, she was depressed, she didn't have friends, and she couldn't go to church. And she said, "Can you help me?" And as a young doctor sitting there, I'm like, I have no idea. So it sent me on my own journey to figure out, can I really help somebody, knowing that, you know, all of my patients that were telling me they were falling apart really didn't, you know, this was what was really happening behind the diabetes, hypertension, cancer. Their lives were really, the most valuable components of life were being eroded. And so it sent me on a journey almost 17 years ago to try and figure out how to help people put their lives back together again. And I ended up on whole food plant-based nutrition and lifestyle medicine.